We're working on a plan for DACA.
The president would support enshrining the DACA protections into law.
Yes, I do trust that the president is sincere.
We want to get massive border security.
It is clear that what Leader Pelosi and I put out last night was exactly accurate.
The wall is going to be built. It'll be funded a little bit later.
We're not for the wall. We'll never be for the wall.
If we put the bill on the floor, it would win.
Ryan and McConnell agree with us on DACA. We're very much on board.
Deal or no deal, the DACA deal we're talking about and what exactly was agreed to or not agreed to, it has fired up conservatives, and Coulter among them, tweeting out at this point, who doesn't want Trump impeached? If we're not getting a wall, I'd prefer President Pence. Let's play Jeopardy. Answer an Easter egg. What's the only thing easier to roll than Donald J. Trump? Let's just tell real Donald Trump there was a hurricane at the border. Maybe he'll rush down with FEMA and build a wall. Asked if she was off the Trump train, Coulter said, no, Trump is off the Trump train. So just one of the conservatives weighing in. Let's bring in our panel. Tonight we have 3 of the 5 with us. Dana Perino, Juan Williams, and Kimberly Guilfoyle. All right, Kimberly, what do you think?
Very interesting, isn't it? I mean, could you have predicted this? But, you know, when you look at sort of the fact pattern and the narrative here of what's emerged, you know, President Trump has had a very difficult time with majorities in the House and the Senate being able to get anything done, whether it's budget or immigration, et cetera. So he's really needed to reach across the lines and try to make some concessions. And this is what a business person does, not just a pure politician, to try to work with the other side to get some things achieved. That being said, I don't think it's really inconsistent with how I knew him to be politically prior to running for president. But for sure, the hardcore Trump supporters and the conservatives are very disappointed because they think that this is a step away in a migration away from campaign promises. And now they feel that the wall is even in jeopardy. Can they even trust him on that, especially with now his latest, like, salt and pepper shakers are, you know, Schumer and Pelosi.
Yeah.
Those
Speaking
are
of
buddies.
Schumer, Juan, you know, you always have to look at the C-SPAN coverage of the Senate floor because you can always pick up a little bit. Today, you had Chuck Schumer talking about his new friend.
He likes us. He likes me anyway. Look, what we said was exactly accurate. Here's what I told him. I said, Mr. President, you're much better off if you can sometimes step right and sometimes step left. If you have to step just in one direction, you're boxed. He gets that. Oh, it's going to work out, and it'll make us more productive, too.
Make us more productive, too, Juan. Nancy Pelosi said he talked New York to Donald Trump.
Let's make a deal. So, yes, I think it would make them more productive. I think that was revealing because I think you see the Schumer sees there's something in it, 1, for the Democrats, but 2, for a Congress that has not gotten much done in terms of major legislative results. The contrary point, though, is what happens among Republicans. Steve King, the Iowa congressman, said basically that the president risks blowing up his base at this point. And you think about that base, but you think about it's about 35–40%. You think about the high retention of Republican support for the president. If that starts to deteriorate, if you get the Ann Coulter voices, the right-wing talk radio voices pulling away from this president, that could crater what is not a high level of support for him in that base.
You remember in the election, he said, I could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and my base would stay with me. Is the wall and this DACA deal, is he testing that theory?
It might have been true about shooting somebody, but maybe not about the wall. Yeah. So what we're talking about is permanent legal status for people who were brought here under no concept of their own because they were children, with enforced border security and enforcement. This is something that actually both congressional party leaderships agree with. The majority of the American people agree with. The majority of Republicans say they agree with it if they are told that President Trump supports it as well. So I've always maintained that he could actually be the president that could get a comprehensive immigration bill done. I think that they are already able to say that there's progress being made on the wall. He talked about fencing and things like that today. Will you see the actual physical structure with the big, beautiful gates and all that? Probably not, because it's just not that practical. And I think that once the shock wears off, that, oh my gosh, he actually might not do the wall right away, I think there's nowhere for them to go. But if Ryan and McConnell had suggested this idea, they would have been raked over the coals. So if President Trump, I think, needs to protect them somewhat, because they got cut out of the deal last night, but they're expected to deliver the votes on the floor. So they're going to need help from President Trump to do that.
I mean, clearly he likes this deal making, and there's indications that the American people kind of like the deal making.
Yeah, and I think this is a really huge opportunity for him to do that, to really coalesce both sides and show that he can get things done, because that's what he promised. So he's got to start putting wins on the board, and he did reach out. Like Dana said, it's important that, you know, the Republican leadership feels that they are included in this and part and parcel with it. So making the mention there of Ryan and McConnell, I think, is important, and he's going to need their help.
The unmasking story is a big story. We're going to continue to cover it, but I want to turn to the breaking news, and this is North Korea firing another missile that flew over Japan today. We've heard so much from this administration, from this President Won, about what's going to happen if these threats continue. Now we are at a tipping point here where they keep on firing these missiles, and it is a threat.
Well, so we had the UN sanction. UN voted, Security Council voted unanimously, including China, critical player here, to support increased sanctions on North Korea, including limiting transit of oil and other supplies, and possibly also cutting off the revenue they get from selling textiles around the world. This is all thought to have really put the North Koreans back on their heels, because the sanctions, they don't have a strong economy, and this would kill their economy. But to the contrary now, the idea that today they're shooting off added missiles, it's just setting off. I don't think alarm is sufficiently strong to say that the reaction in South Korea, and they've got what was a liberal president who was trying to downplay the militarization effort. Suddenly he is on high military alert in South Korea, increasing the use and preparations for employing or deploying missiles against North Korea. And you imagine what the Japanese are feeling. They're already, you know, of course, after World War II, a non-nuclear state. They're making the insistence now that they have to protect themselves. This thing is boiling over.
Yeah, the Pentagon now is confirming to our Pentagon team that North Korea did fire a missile. They're saying that this reached a height of 480 miles, flew 2,300 miles out over Japan. That is significant. You know, the administration, Dana, is saying that the UN sanctions didn't go far enough. They were happy to get the unanimous vote, but they were a bit watered down. This was the Treasury Secretary yesterday on this.
I've worked on an executive order that's ready. If the president wants to use it, we can stop trade with any country that does business with North Korea. We're going to be careful in using these tools, but the president is committed. We will use economic sanctions to bring North Korea to the table.
You're saying stopping trade with China?
Stopping trade with anybody. Nobody would be off the table.
That's the most forward-leaning they've been.
Well, and they have to have it, because they need the sticks in order to get people to the table. And if we have to accept that North Korea is now a nuclear power, then is the next step to get them to the table. Like, that would be something like, what do you talk about at that point? But President Trump will have a chance to try to gather the world behind him about this nuclear threat, because next week when all the leaders come to the United Nations General Assembly meeting, he'll have his first chance to address the world on that stage, and I think this has to be priority number one. But I do feel like this administration is having to deal with the fact that we now have a nuclear-capable North Korea.
Thank you all for being here, or having me.
In our old studio.
Yes, and we will see you at 9 p.m. Eastern tonight for the 5.
Okay.
When we come